All right, guys, we're going to start the program in a matter of moments. A lot to cover on the Tuesday edition of the I Love Seville show. Give the show a like and a share anywhere you are watching. A like and a share anywhere you are watching. Twitter, hello. YouTube, hello. Facebook, hello. LinkedIn, Instagram, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts. Hello, TikTok and Snapchat. Hello and welcome to the program. If you're watching through our daily e-newsletter that goes out to about 120,000 plus inboxes, we want to greet you and say hello to you as well. If you're catching this on iloveseville.com, hello. A lot we're going to cover on the Tuesday edition of this program. Give the show a like and a share. Give the show a like and a share, and we will have a good time. Judah Wickhauer's our director. J-Dubs, how you feeling over there? You feeling good? Yeah. Okay. We can start T-minus 10 seconds, sir. Good Tuesday afternoon, guys. Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love Seville show. Thank you kindly for joining us. It's great to be with you. We're live in Charlottesville, across Central Virginia, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love Seville network. We're presented by Skooma Boutique Dispensary. Skooma Boutique Dispensary on the downtown mall next to Rapture. They have certificate of analyses for everything for sale in the store. Skooma Boutique Dispensary. David and his team, your choice if you want to get some sleep, if you have some anxiety issues, some pain management issues. They have CBD, they have Delta 8, just a lot to offer at Skooma Boutique Dispensary. Also, Ting Fiber Internet powers the network. Crazy fast internet is Ting Fiber Internet. A lot we're going to cover today, including some follow-up details on the Police Civilian Review Board, Chairman Bellamy Brown's statement from the end of last week, the discussion had yesterday night at Charlottesville City Council meeting. A lot to cover on the program. We will also discuss Afton Express, the new Afton Express, which launches September 1. The impact of the Charlottesville bus driver shortage on schools. There's also a bus driver shortage in Albemarle County as well. We'll talk staff at Richmond, Virginia Public Schools being required to get vaccinated on today's show. So Richmond Public School employees must be vaccinated by October 1. I'm going to ask you, what are some of the top institutional or legacy brands in Charlottesville? Of all the businesses and brands in Charlottesville and Central Virginia, which ones, when I say institutional businesses, institutional brands, have the longest legacy or come to mind immediately? We'll talk businesses like Mincer's, businesses like the Virginian Restaurant, Jack and Jill's, Riverside, Roy Wheeler Realty Company has been around for quite some time serving the area. So legacy brands will be discussed on today's show. Alex Erpy will join us in about 20 minutes on the broadcast. A lot to cover from a macro standpoint. Home builder sentiment is falling. Retail sales numbers came out and were released earlier today for July. They are worse than expected, and consumer confidence is at an all-time low. Not all-time, but at a low point that we haven't seen in some years. We'll talk about those topics with Alex Erpy on the I Love Seville show. Guys, I want to talk about first this Police Civilian Review Board. Yesterday we had Bellamy Brown on the program, chairman of the Police Civilian Review Board. Bellamy Brown offered a compelling and inspiring statement at the end of the last Police Civilian Review Board meeting, which was the end of last week. And in this statement, to kind of put it in a nutshell, which we covered yesterday with Bellamy, I would encourage the print reporters, the TV reporters, the radio reporters, the online and digital reporters to watch the interview that we did with Bellamy Brown yesterday, because I think it's undoubtedly news this community, should hear. Mr. Brown, the chairman of the Civilian Review Board, said, look, we went into this with the expectation of holding police officers accountable and being a bridge between Charlottesville citizens and the police department. And as that bridge, we were looking to create communication and trust and a connection with the police department and Charlottesville citizens. And he said, the longer I've spent on this board and the longer I've spent talking with officers and people around the department, I've realized that perhaps what the Civilian Review Board should be doing is not only holding officers accountable and being that bridge between police department and citizens, but we should also be offering attention and the spotlight to what we perceive the Civilian Review Board, what the board perceives to be potential leadership issues within the Charlottesville Police Department, and how those leadership issues are creating a morale issue within the police department. And I thought he eloquently explained this. He said, look, the job is hard enough already. You're paid not well. You're putting your health and your life at risk. Certainly in the wake of George Floyd's murder in Minneapolis, the brand of police in general is frowned upon by a lot of folks in the community. And, you're not able to live in the community you're serving. I mean, over 70% of Charlottesville city employees cannot afford to live in the city of Charlottesville. So you have a lot of factors already working against you from a quality of life, from a morale standpoint when you wear a badge. You may not come home alive. You may not come home completely intact. Your family worries about you every time you leave the door. You're not getting paid the money you should be paid. A large portion of the community doesn't like you. Okay? A large portion of the community is asking for, itemized reports on how the $19 million police budget is being spent. And then Chairman Brown says, you take all that, which is stressful enough, and you combine or you compound all that stress with morale issues that he said stems from leadership within the Charlottesville Police Department. And he said, look, it's important to expose these morale issues within the department because the majority of the demographics or the majority of the neighborhoods that are being policed by police officers are black and brown neighborhoods in communities. So adding more stress to the plate of an officer is not helping that officer police the black and brown communities that the department most likely is in and policing. And I agreed with what he said. I absolutely agree with what he said. It took gumption and courage and cojones and backbone to make that statement. Because the statement he made, and you can find it on iloveseville.com, you can find it on our Instagram. We encourage you to follow our Instagram, our Facebook. Look at the interview from yesterday. It was incredibly compelling. Incredibly compelling. The statement he made was one of leadership and courage. And he's catching heat for making that statement, Chairman Brown, because the citizens that don't know 100% what's happening say, look, your sole job is to hold officers accountable and work on behalf of citizens. And here you are using your platform to side with officers against leadership within the department. And he's saying, no, that's not what I'm doing. I'm exposing the leadership and the morale issues within the department because I know those leadership and morale issues within the department will impact how officers police the black and brown communities in Charlottesville. And that is his true inspiration, motivation, and reason for using his platform the way he did. End of last week and yesterday on this network. And folks, that is leadership. Making decisions and saying things that folks will not agree with in real time, but with the benefit of hindsight, you realize, you know what? Chairman Brown was right all along. And he is. There's a reason the turnover is so significant within the Charlottesville Police Department. Okay? We should be paying police officers more. Police officers deserve to live in the communities they serve. When you live in the communities you serve, it creates a concept called institutional memory. And institutional memory translates to knowing the people's names on your beat, knowing what they like to do, where they live, the trouble they may or may not get into. And having institutional memory on a police beat is good for policing. And one of the ways we create institutional memory within a department is upping pay, creating better community spirit and morale within the department, showing a clear vertical career path. You do the right thing, you police the right way, and you can climb vertically in these paths, this totem pole. I thought what Bellamy Brown, Chairman Brown, did was quite impressive. Quite impressive. It came up yesterday in Charlottesville City Council meeting. And in the Charlottesville City Council meeting, Katrina Turner called, discussed, chatted, and talked about the Police Civilian Review Board. Council didn't spend too much time on this topic. Mayor Walker alluded that surveys, morale surveys, can be manipulated in yesterday's meeting. For us to have a world-class mindset and for us to be a world-class city, we need world-class policing. And for us to get world-class policing, we need to make a commitment to the department and its individuals. Perhaps that's not happening now. Perhaps that's not happening now from a pay standpoint, from a climb the career path standpoint, from a leadership and morale standpoint. I mean, heck, you got half the country already opposed to your career because of the unfortunate murder of George Floyd and a number of other incidents that followed. It's a brand perception issue in a lot of ways. I'll continue to attract attention to this topic because I think it's an important one. I really do. I can't imagine putting on your clothes, walking out the door of your house, and being uncertain whether this particular shift you will risk your life or your health, your body, your physicalness. That's not my job. It's not Judah's job. That's not most of our jobs. That's why we salute our servicemen for serving our country. I never understood the saluting of servicemen and why that same salute, which is important and should be done, 100% should be done, why that same mindset does not follow our fire, rescue, and policing personnel. We give props, deserving props, to our military and our servicemen and women. And we say thank you for serving our country, for standing up for our rights and for our freedom. We do this. But we don't say, thank you, firemen, firewomen, EMTs, policeman, policewoman, for protecting our neighborhood in our community. We say it to Air Force, Army, Marines, Navy, SEALs, Rangers. Thank you for protecting the nation. But we don't say to police, thank you for protecting our home, in our neighborhood, in our town. I perplexed and bewildered by that. Should be both. Undoubtedly should be both. All right, let's talk some local news. Afton Express, it's a new commuter bus, launches on September 1. Free rides for a month. In less than 2 weeks, there's going to be a new way to travel from the Shenandoah Valley to Charlottesville. It's called the Afton Express. There will be a ribbon-cutting ceremony Monday in Fishersville. 3 new buses, each equipped with bike racks, USB ports, and Wi-Fi. Service starts the 1st of September. An estimated 2,500 people in Stanton, Waynesboro, and Augusta County commute every day over Afton Mountain to get to the city of Charlottesville and Albemarle County. The Afton Express perhaps alleviates some traffic and provides a stress-free alternative to driving. The 3 buses will operate Monday through Friday with 4 trips in the morning and 4 more later in the day. You can find out more information on the Afton Express at this website, aftonexpress.org. I am all for more community transportation options. I am all for protecting the environment from car and vehicle pollution. I am all for getting more traffic off the roads. I'm all for that. I'm all for quality of life that's associated with exercising, quality of life that's associated with an improved environmental conditions, quality of life associated with public transportation. I'm all for this. I think the timing of the Afton Express launch, September 1, it's launching in arguably one of the most arduous times ever for public transportation to launch. The Delta variant is no freaking joke. More contagious than the chicken pox. How many people are willing to get on public transportation in a month or so when this Delta variant's going to spike cases and hospitalizations? I'm telling you right now, it's going to happen. Students returning to school, UVA students coming back to Charlottesville, families returning from August and summer travel, getting ready for school, people spending more time inside because colder months are right around the corner from us. Hell, flu season right around the corner from us. Lee Elberson, CEO, Claiborne Education, joined us this past week on the I Love Seville show, and he says, expect virtual learning before Thanksgiving for public schools. The guy doesn't make statements like that unless they're backed by thought and reasoning. He's a numbers-oriented individual, Lee Elberson. Still, the Afton Express, another way to get around the area in a public transportation fashion. I applaud it. I salute it. I'm excited for it. I'm curious to see engagement rates for this public transport mythology during a Delta outbreak. I think those engagement rates will be numbered. We will see. Speaking of buses, I was having this conversation one-on-one with JW. JW, if you're watching, you know who you are. It's not JW, the director. It's JW, a listener of this show. JW, I'm trying to protect your anonymity. He sent me this message, and because I have so much respect for him, and because I know he's got his pulse on so much in this community, I incorporated this message and this topic into today's show. JW sends me this message. I'm seeing the total chaos beginning with school transportation since people can't get their kids to school. The city pretty much said they flat out don't have enough bus drivers, which, Jerry, you've been saying this for weeks now. This is going to be interesting. My one son is going to kindergarten in the city this year. Got my fingers crossed that the schools stay open at least till Thanksgiving. you got school bus driver situations in Richmond, in Williamsburg, in Albemarle County, in Chesterfield. The lead story right now on the Richmond Times-Dispatch website, it's richmond.com. The lead story on the Richmond Times-Dispatch website is, lacking bus drivers ahead of school next week, Chesterfield County schools urge parents to drive their children to school. This school bus driver, so why? I'm going to ask you this question, and I've posed this question before on the I Love CVille show. Can you think of a riskier profession from a COVID standpoint than school bus driver? School bus driver is on a bus with 25 to 40 kids who are likely unvaccinated. 25 to 40 kids who probably will not be wearing their masks because they're freaking kids. You're driving a tin can around. You're welcoming strangers from all walks of life, all resources of life, all different ideologies and demographics of life onto the tin can. In the colder months, the windows will be up because it's cold. We're not talking about great air conditioning and heat in these tin cans. You want to expose yourself to COVID? Be a school bus driver. What is the lowest vaccinated demographic of human beings on the planet today? Children 12 and under. They haven't been approved for the vaccine. Because they haven't been approved for the vaccine, you legitimately can say children 12 and under have the most vulnerability and potential exposure to getting the Delta variant. You're going to ask these children to get on a bus and you're going to drive them around. Can you think of a riskier profession for exposure to Delta than school bus driver? Put it in the feed if you can think of one. That's one of them for sure. On top of that, the school bus driver is underpaid. On top of that, the school bus driver does not get the respect and accolades he or she deserves. I mean, good God, they're driving our children around. And yet the profession of school bus driver is not respected or paid like it should be. You get minimal benefits, few raises. You're working other side jobs because your bus driver position is not paying you the living wage you need. I mean, it's factors working against school bus drivers and hiring them. Chesterfield County is telling the parents to drive the damn kids to school. Look at what this is doing. This is further pushing the under-resourced child and his or her family down the totem pole of life. Parents of children that have to ride the bus are doing this because their moms and dads and their extended family are working and unable to drive their kid to school. The moms and dads that have economic means and resources are more likely to drive their son or daughter to school because they have one of the most precious commodities out there, free time. Time is our most precious commodity. A family where one person is working and someone gets to stay home, that's a luxury. Many families don't have it. So as these schools come back to action, you're going to have under-resourced children on buses riding in these tin cans longer than ever. Tin cans that are hotbeds for COVID. Routes are being combined because they don't have enough drivers. So little Johnny and little Susie have to spend more time on the bus before or after school because routes are being combined. As they're spending more time on the bus before or after school, it's less time away from structure, less time away from homework and studying, more time in a tin can, and more time exposed to COVID. This is how the rich stay richer and the poor stay poorer. A microcosm of it, if you may. Richmond public schools are requiring all staff to be vaccinated by October 1. October 1, Richmond Public Schools requiring all staff to be vaccinated. This is going to be the norm, dude. This is going to be the norm, dude. I'm telling you right now. If we do not see, if in your crystal ball you do not see a Delta spike, you're not reading the tea leaves correctly. You're not reading the tea leaves correctly. Top institutional brands around Charlottesville. I'm going to save this for after my interview with Alex Erpy. Brands like Mincer's, Riverside Lunch, Jack and Jill's. Judah suggested the University of Virginia. Hell, the University of Virginia is the premier legacy or institutional brand in the area. He's right. The Virginian Restaurant, the oldest restaurant in the city of Charlottesville, 1923 it was founded. C&O, in a lot of ways, the pioneer for culinary in downtown Charlottesville. Bodo's, an institutional brand, undoubtedly. Isn't it interesting when we think what are the top institutional brands and businesses in Charlottesville, immediately our mindset goes to food and beverage and restaurants? At least mine did. Roy Wheeler Realty Company. You talk about the longest running real estate brand, it's that one. That's a legacy brand. Roy Wheeler Realty Company. We'll talk about some of the institutional brands after Alex Erpy. I will discuss with Alex Erpy the retail sales number. The drop was worse than expected, and home builder sentiment falls to the lowest level in over a year as buyers face sticker shock of epic proportions. A lot to cover with Alex Erpy, the CEO of Emergent Financial Services. Alex, I am on time today. I am on time, Alex Erpy. That is reason to celebrate. I love this man. Alex Erpy is the CEO of Emergent Financial Services. Alex, I'm on time. It's 1 o'clock.
It's perfect. It's right on the dot.
How are you? Hey, from one orange striped shirt button-down guy to another, you're looking sharp, my friend.
Thank you. Same here.
My friend, a lot I want to cover with you. Why don't we start with an opening question? Yesterday and halfway through the trading day today, I'm seeing a lot of red on the board here. Mm-hmm. Why? What is causing this red? Stocks currently, I have the CNBC, I have CNBC on right now in the studio. Stocks currently at session lows right now at the halftime.
Mm-hmm. I think just the market is pulling back as it's seen a lot of news in terms of retail spending. I think it was down. Retail spending was down 1.1. Retail sales, I should say, 1.1%. Consumer confidence. So the University of Michigan does a consumer confidence study. It's at the lowest point since 2011, which, as you recall, that was when that was a really tough stock market year, right in the middle of the recession. Still hadn't really come out of that yet. So the lowest in a long time. Consumer confidence. I think the market's just looking at all this and trying to figure out, are we going to have more shutdowns? Are we going to go back all the way to some of the measures that we were seeing last year, which were so terrible for small business, and declining as such? I think there's also a little bit of pullback. If you're noticing some pullbacks, Home Depot had some disappointing numbers indicating people are getting a little tired of the DIY home projects. And Walmart, interestingly, their e-commerce sales are down. Grocery sales were up. So I think a combination of people are less interested in spending money online and doing DIY home projects than they were in the middle of the pandemic last year, but their confidence is still really low in terms of going out. And I think the market's just digesting all this and seeing a lot of uncertainty.
Alex Erpy, CEO of Emergent Financial Services. The DIY project trend is interesting. I recently sold my Pinterest position in my portfolio after, frankly, losing some money on the buy here. Pinterest exploded in 2020 and early parts of this year as people were using Pinterest to do these DIY projects at home, my wife included. I got in a little late with Pinterest and frankly took a spanking. So you see a tie with Home Depot, potentially with Pinterest, where people just having DIY fatigue?
That's what it seems to be looking like. This just in combination with the e-commerce slightly slowing down and the way things are going, it appears that, I mean, Home Depot really took off last year, and I'm assuming the same can be said. We don't have much sure Lowe's has come out with their numbers yet, but they really took off last year because, as we all know, everybody was in there. And I just think this is maybe a tailing off of that. It's tough to keep up that level of spending, that pace, indefinitely. So I think we're seeing just people pull back, and when people's confidence, I think, is down completely, and they're at this point, no one is sitting here. I think that at the beginning of last year, let's face it, that first 2 weeks to stop the spread, there was sort of a sense, I feel, of, well, this is temporary. It won't be around that long. We'll get this done. I'll do some projects. And I think at this point, maybe people are beginning to suspect, no, if we go lockdown again, we know how this went last time.
I can't imagine we're going lockdown again.
I would hope not.
What's your instinct say?
My instinct says certain areas may attempt it, maybe on a city or state level, but that people will push back very strongly, particularly since the areas that are probably most likely to attempt it are also areas where there's higher vaccination rates. And I suspect a lot of vaccinated people will be like, no, thank you. This is the precise reason why we're supposed to get vaccinated, to prevent this kind of lockdown.
How do you characterize the economy? I ask you this question maybe every other interview here. We've used terminology like fragile, vulnerable, terminology like strong and momentum building. We use terminology like confident or lukewarm in describing the economy. And it seems like we do this interview every Tuesday. I watch you and Xavier on Thursdays at 10:15 with Today y Mañana. It seems like week to week to week, and it's absolutely a byproduct of COVID, this look or stance of the economy is changing.
I think that's very true, and I think that's what we're seeing, because let's face it, the number one thing that I think affects the economy is uncertainty of any kind. Uncertainty is the detriment, right? You always want to know, we're human beings, we like to know what's happening, or we at least like to know with a certain level of confidence what's not going to happen. And we just don't have that confidence or that certainty right now. And I think it's reflecting it in the way that consumers are behaving. And it's tough to have consumer confidence when you're being hit with this headwinds of, do I know what's going to happen with the economy? Do I know what's going to happen with schools? Do I know what's going to happen with inflation? Do I know what's going to happen with just jobs numbers as things come back? You know, what businesses are going to come back online? What businesses are not going to come back online? If you're a restaurant owner, is my city going to go like New York and turn me into a vaccine police? Or is my city going to say, no, you can do whatever you want, but then I have to worry, well, what happens if one of my staff tests positive with Delta? Do I need to shut down the whole thing? Do I need to think of these things again? And I think all this uncertainty just piles on, and it reflects it in people's willingness to go out and spend money. And I think it's human nature. When we're nervous, we keep cash close to the vest. And in an economy where 70% of our growth comes from consumer spending, people's doing what I, as an investment advisor, like to encourage them to do, which is save. As much as I encourage saving, and I think it's a good thing, our economy is built 70% on the back of consumer spending. And when that declines, or people get worried, that has effects on the economy.
Consumer confidence at its lowest point since 2011. When you digested that and you chatted with the Earpy men, Xavier, Michael, Nicholas, and Mrs. Earpy about this, what came up during that conversation?
For us, the conversation always focuses on, okay, we have this information, what do we do about it? Because the biggest challenge and I think in finance and investing, and I think a lot of times in life, is how do you translate knowledge what you think may happen, what you suspect will happen, what the data are telling you, into something actionable. We see it all the time, like with the stock market, right? You could sit there and say, oh, I think space exploration is going to do really well. Well, what do I do with this knowledge? What companies do I buy? What ETFs do I buy? So for us, it's all about translating what we think might happen into investment decisions. And so for us, it focuses a lot on how are our portfolios for our clients properly positioned. What I mean by that is, are they diversified? Do they have a good number of steady, stable stocks? Is there a lot of risk? How would a portfolio like this have done in a 10% market correction, in a 20% market crash? So just be constantly thinking of, all right, if things go poorly, right? If this event of an economic downturn, which I don't suspect will happen, but could happen, the odds are no longer 1%, maybe the odds are 20%, right? So in other words, you take that information. If this happens, what happens to my financial situation? I mean, for us as investment advisors, it's what happens to the financial situation of our clients. But I think the average person out there can just take a look at your financial situation, right? Your income, your expenses, and say, all right, I'm not saying this is going to happen, right? But if A happens, or if B happens, if C happens, what does my financial situation look like? And that sometimes tells you, do you need to make some changes? Because you never want to just underestimate and say, well, that is only a 5% chance of happening, so I don't have to worry about that. But as this 2020 showed us, the 5% chance of happening happens 5 out of every 100 years. So it's not, sooner or later, it's going to happen.
Good take. Alex Erpigay, CEO of Emergent Financial Services. Are we going to see the COVID stocks get back in vogue again?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think part of it is, I always think you have to take into account a certain novelty the first time something rides momentum up, and we might not see the same kind of novelty with Zoom and some of these other COVID stocks that really just took off, Tesla and these other ones. That a lot of that I think had to do with extra money in people's pockets, right? From three stimulus checks, I think, that came through, right? And in addition to that, the first time a lot of people start going on Zoom, people look at it and say, well, I really should get into this. So there's a certain momentum that I think happens the first time. They may not repeat itself, but I think the data certainly are showing that people are adjusting in terms of their confidence. The question is, will they adjust by not spending at all, or will they adjust by going back to e-commerce? Because the e-commerce numbers like I said, Walmart was seeing
we're not great.
Sort of a shift. They were seeing a shift from their e-commerce side to their grocery side. Now, are we going to see that shift reverse, or are people going to say, well, I'll just spend less, period, because it's anxiety and lack of confidence more than my inability to go out and shop?
This I find very curious, and it kind of rides the coattails of what we're talking about here. One of the names that is becoming almost commonplace now is Cathie Wood. I mean, you put on CNBC, you put on Bloomberg, you put on Fox Business any given day, her name's going to come up.
Absolutely.
Cathie Wood has got an ETF, the ARK Innovation ETF, that a lot of folks follow. Another name that folks know, I think, less from investment and finance and more from Hollywood is Dr. Michael Burry. And Dr. Burry, he predicted the 2008 housing crisis. It was turned into a film, The Big Short. The Big Short is a fantastic movie. If you guys have not watched it, please watch it. It does a great way of explaining the housing crisis of 2008, but it does it in a way that's very understandable and digestible. So Dr. Michael Burry, he has basically, I don't want to use the word challenged, but in a public filing on Monday, Dr. Burry disclosed that his firm, Scion Asset Management, as of the end of the second quarter, held bearish put options against 235,000 plus shares of Cathie Wood's actively managed portfolio. He basically is saying Cathie Wood is wrong. Cathie Wood,
basically.
Yes, and then Cathie Wood comes out with a series of tweets today. And she comes out with a series of tweets. This is Cathie Wood. Series of tweets explaining why Michael Burry is in fact the person that's wrong here. So in the era of 2021 social media, it's not just presidents that use Twitter to go back and forth. It's not just celebrities and musicians that use Twitter that go back and forth. It's not just, your neighbors down the street that are beefing on Twitter. You got people worth hundreds of millions of dollars that are Twitter arguing, going back and forth here. What do you make of this all together? And then I'll give you some specific questions.
Talk about a different world. That
crazy.
The response to an SEC filing that you're short a fund is a series of tweets on Twitter. The interesting thing, I'd be very interested to know, to dig more in and see what the exercise date on those put options are, because I'm curious, is he short Cathie Wood's actively managed portfolio short term or for a longer period? Because he may be, because with put options they could be 30 days from now, they could be 60 days from now. So he could be saying, I think she's going to crash this year, or he could be saying, I think she's finished in a year from now. So I'd be interested. I'm not sure that's part of the publicly available, probably just the total that he's short, but it's an interesting thing to think about. And her response was also very interesting, because she basically suggested that he's just not familiar with the fundamentals of space exploration and to find the next frontier of human technology. Because her argument is the firms in her portfolio have 20 years worth since the tech bust, basically have 20 years worth of pent-up technological advances that they will now capitalize on in the next 10 years. And we'll see if she's right. I think 10% of her portfolio is Tesla, I think.
A substantial amount.
Which is pretty substantial in an ETF. And I know Dr. Berry is also short Tesla. He has been in the past, and I think he's continuing to be. So that may be part of it. But it is interesting, because I think it just comes down to, right, this comes down to, I think, just two different worldviews. And it shows you, I think it's a good indicator that you can't always just look on CNBC and say, what is this expert saying? Because I'm just going to do what they do and invest what they invest in. Because here you have two very successful people, right? One who successfully predicted 08-09, one who has made a lot of money, including just last year in Cathie Wood and her investments, right? And they cannot both be right.
Yeah.
One or the other is wrong, which is a really good just sign for us as the average investor and as investment advisors. You can't just pick your stocks based on what experts are saying, because the experts are going to tell you a wide range of opinions, and they do not always agree with each other.
Cathie Wood's ARK Innovation returned at nearly 150% in 2020. Michael Burry was the only guy that predicted the housing crisis in 2008, and this is what I was going to throw to you. They're on completely other sides of the spectrum, beefing on Twitter. Cathie Wood she straight up said he does not understand the fundamentals that are creating explosive growth and investment opportunities in the innovation and technology spaces. I mean, she's basically calling this guy out here. Isn't this calling him out?
Basically, it's and what's interesting is, obviously, she's going to defend her own fund.
She has to.
She wants to encourage more investors to pool their money into that fund. So she's going to go out and defend it. But it just goes to show you that the market really is, even to this day, right? We joke about it as gambling and things like that, but the market really is, you have these, especially when you're talking companies like this, like Tesla and these tech companies that are in ARK investment. It really is ideas. And different people, we're all human beings. We're all going to look at these ideas and value them very differently. And Michael Berry is basically looking at this and saying, I looked at these ideas and I don't see value. I see overpriced stocks, right, that are not making any money and that they have no value. And Cathie Wood is looking at this and saying, I see ideas that are not making money now, but that they're going to make gangbusters money in the next 10 years. Right? And that's just two very different opinions. And until it plays out, we're not going to know who was right or who was wrong. But it's just to show you two very smart people can very much disagree on the valuation of something. And it's all those different agreements and valuations and thoughts that make up the movement of the stock market on any given day.
Alex Erpy, guys, our guest. We spend Tuesdays with him getting some kind of understanding of what's happening on Wall Street and the markets. He's the CEO of Emergent Financial Services. If you're looking to grow your wealth, your retirement, and get yourself in a better financial position, guys, the firm of your choice, the call, the email to make is to Emergent Financial Services. The ERPI men do it the right way. My friend, today y mañana on Thursday at 10:15 a.m., what can we expect?
Today y mañana is going to be a fun one on Thursday. So first we're going to have Andre Xavier, serial entrepreneur here in Charlottesville. We're going to talk about Patch Brewing Company, his new venture. Of course, he's also the co-owner of the Seaville Hop-On Tours that are here. So we're going to just talk with him about what's going on, what he's seen, what's the potential maybe he's seen with Patch Brewing Company that he's just started out there, and then we're going to have on Krista Varaniec. So she's with Seaville Jazzercise.
Nice. And
they're a group that they integrate jazz with fitness, aerobic, exercise, and so they put them together. So you're as you're doing this exercise, you're also getting your enthusiasm and you're integrating jazz into that. So I think that'll be a lot of fun as well.
Do you have time for a question?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is from Kevin, who's contributed to Today y Mañana as well.
Nice.
And he says, Jerry, ask Alex's take on Delta and whether he's worried about it in the back portion of the year.
That's a very good question. And I think I am worried about it. For me, more from a uncertainty perspective. Because the big question with Delta, right, is that as you get a lot of developed countries that have very high vaccination rates, right? Because, I mean, we complain sometimes in the United States about vaccination rates, but we're very high relative to a lot of the world, right? As you have developed countries with very high vaccination rates, is Delta going to leak through those vaccines? In other words, does it continue to spread and cause uncertainty despite high vaccination rates? And if that's the case, then I think that's what produces economic uncertainty in the second half of the year. If, as time passes, we see that, in fact, vaccination is a very strong protection against Delta, which we all hope is the case, then I would feel much better from a purely economic standpoint going forward, right? What concerns me is initial data out of Israel, UK, Iceland, that Delta can still spread among vaccinated population, in which case I think that's where a lot of the uncertainty is coming from. So my hope is that data proves to be just initial and maybe it doesn't pan out that way, but that it does worry me from that particular standpoint. I mean, the signs all point to, from a health standpoint, the signs all point to the information that if you are vaccinated, you are much more protected in terms of serious illness. But from an economic standpoint, because we're still counting cases and we're still making economic decisions in terms of lockdowns, masking, vaccination requirements based on case numbers, that does worry me, that initial data, because you don't want a scenario where you got high case numbers that then lead to detrimental economic effects because of vaccine leakage.
I think that is very well said. I think he said it better than I could. That identifies with what I'm feeling as well. I encourage everyone who's watching and listening Thursday at 10:15 a.m. with the closer, the Mariano Rivera of the family, Xavier Yerpi, and Alex Yerpi, and Nicholas Yerpi, the social media ninja. I gotta get a catchy nickname for Alex Yerpi. I mean, he's number one. I don't wanna like irritate anyone in the family by calling him the handsome one. I don't want to call it. I'm not going to say that because I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers here. If you have any suggestions for a nickname, please let me know. Oh, you're good people. You have a good one, Alex. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jerry. We feel the same way about you. Take care. My best to Judah.
All right, take care. Thursday at 10:15 a.m. Xavier is the closer. Xavier is Mariano Rivera, the ERPI closer. Nick is the social media ninja, the marketing guru. Michael, I need to spend some more time with you so before I can give you a moniker. But I will give you a moniker, Michael. Alex, I need to come up with a moniker for you. Xavier, I missed these questions. I'm sorry, I just saw them now. I missed your questions, Xavier. All right, a couple things before we get out of here. Oh, this didn't come up with Alex. I was going to bring this up with Alex. Home builder sentiment has fallen to the lowest level in over a year. Guys, you got some KPIs, some macro indicators that have come out in the last few days that are, choosing my words carefully here, that show the vulnerable nature of the economy. The retail sales numbers from July were way worse than expected. The retail sales number for July were expected to be a drop of 0.3%. They ended up being a decline of 1.1%. That's one KPI. The other KPI is home builder sentiment has fallen to the lowest level in over a year. Lowest level in over a year for new construction home builder sentiment. Another KPI that should tremendously concern you is the spread of this Delta variant. Okay? That should tremendously concern anyone that's watching. You see red across the board on the big screen in the studio, red yesterday. Vulnerable is how I would describe it. Uneasy, uncertain, still figuring out its identity, the economy. In search of some internal fortitude to persevere the economy. That's how I would characterize. Top institutional brands in Charlottesville before we get out of here. Judah, I'm going to put you on the spot here. And you know we love you here, Judah Wickower. We're huge fans of you, Judah Wickower. We're going to need some suggestions for the top institutional brands from you. Now, you did come up with arguably the best one in UVA, Judah. Mincer's? Yeah, I had Mincer's. Mincer's is a good one. I think Mincer should be on there. What else do you think, J-Dubs? I got Jack and Jill's, I got Riverside Lunch, I got Mincer's, I got UVA, top institutional brands in Charlottesville, Albemarle County, Central Virginia. The Virginian restaurant is the oldest restaurant in the city of Charlottesville. You want a cocktail party trivia question? What is the oldest restaurant in the city of Charlottesville? The answer is the Virginian, 1923. It's almost 100 years old. Bodo's, I would say, by now is an institution. Wheeler Realty Company, a legacy brand, the longest running firm in real estate in Central Virginia. Roy Wheeler, recently purchased by Howard Hanna. What else comes to mind there, J-Dubs? I mean, do you throw the Jefferson Theater in there? I know it's had a couple of iterations, the Jefferson Theater. Do you put the Jefferson in there? The Jefferson at one time was owned by the journalist Hawes Spencer. Not anymore, but the Jefferson Theater, I think you put in institutional brands. C&O Restaurant was the first from a culinary scene in downtown Charlottesville. Sandy McAdams, the founder of the C&O. Then he passed it to Dave. Dave, rest in power. And then from Dave, the current owner, Dean Maupin, executive chef and owner C&O. I think C&O's got to be on there from an institutional brand standpoint. The White Spot. The White Spot and the Nook. Judah says the Nook. What is not on there anymore, J-Dubs, is Little John's. Little John's is closed. College Inn is closed. Little John's and the College Inn, not on there. The Aberdeen Barn, I would characterize as an institutional brand. My dad went to UVA. My dad is 71. When he was a student at the University of Virginia, a really big deal was when Grandma and Granddad came to visit, and they would take them for a steak dinner at the Aberdeen Barn. Aberdeen Barn has got to be one of those institutional brands on there. Isn't it interesting how the institutional brands we immediately think of are restaurants? You think of institutional brands associated with retail. What is the longest and oldest brewery in the city of Charlottesville, J-Dubs? Do you know that?
Was it South Street?
I think it is South Street. I think it's South Street by just a couple of months, beating out Star Hill. Star Hill initially on West Main Street. I think South Street was a couple of months older than Star Hill. South Street since 1998, South Street Brewing Company, since 1998. That's another good trivia question for a cocktail party for a conversation starter. We'll continue that topic tomorrow. Other institutional brands in the city of Charlottesville or Albemarle County. That's a good topic of discussion for this talk show. All right, that's all she wrote. My name is Jerry Miller. It's the Wednesday edition of the I Love Seville show. Thank you to Skooma Boutique Dispensary. Guys, you got to try the CBD and the Delta 8 at Skooma Boutique Dispensary. You got anxiety options, pain management options, options to help you relax, and options to help you sleep through the night. David and his team at Skooma Boutique Dispensary are doing it right. Certificate of analyses on everything in the store. And I also want to shine a positive spotlight on Interstate Pest Control and Interstate Service Company, truly a home's best friend. Realtors, if you need help getting to the closing table a little bit faster, you should be thinking Interstate. Interstate. For Judah Wickhauer, for Alex Erpy, my name is Jerry Miller. This, the I Love Seville show on a Tuesday. Hasta luego. So long.